Adam Friedland had Ritchie Torres on his show. He's just had a bunch of different interviews that seem to come out of nowhere, including one that was pretty hilarious with Anthony Weiner.
Chris Cuomo.
But the latest one here is Ritchie Torres, obviously a member of Congress who has become notorious for taking a lot of AIPAC money and being a vociferous defender of Israel's genocide in Gaza, and speaking with a lot of authority about what Jewish people care about and what is anti-Semitic and what is hateful towards Jews and what is not. Adam Friedland is a Jewish man and here sits across from Ritchie Torres. And like, I know that it seems like what Adam was saying when he posted about this was that he had mixed feelings about this interview because he was very vulnerable. I think it's really awesome that he was and showed, courage to put yourself out there in this way, to speak about his experience of being indoctrinated into Zionism and having gone to Israel and what the process was like to extricate himself from that. I always think that's valuable when people talk about it. And what I think the best part of what came out of this interview was that Torres looks like a sociopath, and he looks immensely vapid and callous and corrupt. And for my money, that's a pretty good outcome because that's kind of the reality. So here is an excerpt from that interview talking about Israel.
You're being a dick. That's mean.
No, go back a little bit if that's okay. Maybe like 30 seconds. This is perfect.
The world saw the Holocaust and they established standards for what a genocide is. It was the same year. And the world said that this shouldn't be a thing that happens.
Pause briefly. We don't need to take it off the screen, but he's referring to 1948, basically saying that the standards for what constitutes a genocide and the same year that the state of Israel was founded, it happened at the same year.
Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. It doesn't track to me why there's this fixation with kids at a school and two examples of people at a restaurant that there was banging.
Two examples. I mean, there are surveys on it.
Give me
read the ADL surveys on it. Because
it's hard for me to talk about this in public.
Clearly,
because you're being a dick. That's mean.
No, I'm not being mean. I'm just clear it's an emotional topic.
All right, I'll share with you what happened.
I'm not.
I lived there.
I don't intend to be mean, so.
Sir, I lived there when I was 18, and I grew up a Zionist. And we were told, and our whole community in this country is told, that we have to defend Israel and love Israel because it will stop at the Holocaust. It will stop another Holocaust from happening. And my dad was born in 1951. That was 6 years after these atrocities. His friends' parents, he knew these people that had been through this hell, these skeletons. And it terrified us. And the understanding in our community is that we have to defend Israel. But I lived there, and I went to a settlement at the end of my year there, and I looked down the hill at a Palestinian village, and I saw how they lived, and I turned back and I looked at the settlement and saw how they lived. And people live in a world where they're demeaned and dehumanized and surveilled constantly by people and this isn't in Gaza, by people in SWAT team outfits with semi-automatic weapons, and that's what the world is seeing. And you keep telling me that the problem is someone's getting yelled at a restaurant? I'm sorry.
You're conflating two different issues. So I don't
Please. Me saying this to you right now will hurt people in my own family, okay? Because this is a very important thing to us. And the fact that I still fucking care about being Jewish is embarrassing. I should just be a guy. But this feels like a stain on our history. And it feels like it's changed what being Jewish is. Because what being Jewish is isn't Israel. Judaism has existed for 4,000 years. This is a country for 75 years. It is the oldest, one of the oldest monotheistic religions. Anti-Semitism is one of the oldest forms of hatred. People in my life are going to be mad at me about this, but I'm saying this because I am Jewish. You know, and I don't understand why you would be.
Look, how you define.
I want to
I
have.
feel like I'm here to be lectured, not.
Shut up. That's not nice. You can't talk that way. Why are one set of Jews but more important than others?
No one's saying any.
What happened? You went to the beach in Israel? What? You went to a restaurant or something?
Yeah.
A nice restaurant?
No.
Like, listen.
All right. Let's pause it now because that's one excerpt. But Brian has a theory about this. I don't want to put you on the spot about this, but
there's some back context. When this was Come Town, before it was the Adam Friedland show, Adam always talked about getting sucked off on his trip to Israel. They made fun of him for that all the time, but that's like a move. And I think
it's a part of the recruitment grooming process.
And I think Ritchie Torres
got some. Yeah. Well,
overlooking the Mediterranean in a condo.
Must be beautiful. Later in the interview, he brings up gratuitously Tel Aviv pride out of nowhere, which is just like another way that Westerners get sold on the idea that like Israel is this egalitarian place because they have pride parades there. Although you can't legally get married in Israel if you're a gay person. Let's leave that alone for a second. So it was informative to see how Torres bought into that and how. It seems like he was on an Israel trip when he was really young. Ritchie grew up
24 years old.
24. Yeah. Ritchie grew up like in a lot of poverty. Yeah. And you go like, we get flooded with this amount of money where AIPAC is like, we will basically secure your place in power or for X period of time with our unlimited funds. You can get to the dance. If you're a guy like Torres who doesn't seem to have a lot of scruples, you sign up.
Yeah, he was plucked out of poverty and joined a mafia.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's our political system.
Yeah, but I mean,
Adam Friedland is actually a pretty earnest guy. I've been a fan of his since Come Town was using the Home Improvement theme song as an intro. We had him on the Michael Brooks show 6 years ago talking about and I believe an I-24 interview that he did, and he was similar to this, sort of embarrassed about it. He didn't really want to talk about it, and when posting this, he said they weren't sure if they're going to release it. The trouble is he was too earnest for what is a complete psychopath. I think that shows to people. Like Ritchie Torres is like when you say the word buy in, he's bought. Like he would not be there. We would not know who Ritchie Torres is unless he was willing to justify everything that Zionists want justified and nothing that they don't. And to the extent that he will ever break with Israel, he has permission to because it's untenable.
Also, I think, you do Ritchie Torres and people like him too many favors when you even insinuate that they care about Jewish people or Jewish people being safe. And that's not what Adam Friedland was doing. And I think that was a very powerful clip because he was obviously very vulnerable. And like, it's important to hear about these experiences and how people, extricate themselves from these sorts of ways of thinking. But Ritchie Torres, most Zionists, like their care for Jewish people is more about the care for the power that invoking Jewish people's identity and like that collective. And, in the case of the Holocaust, that collective tragedy and trauma has allowed them to wield within our political system. And it's not just the Jewish identity. You see this across the board with the way in which a lot of our political parties engage with identity. It's not about the people. It's about the power that you can garner from co-opting people's story, co-opting people's tragedy. And then, once it's no longer politically useful, they jettison them. Like, I have no doubt that once, being really, really pro-Israel, being really, really like evocatively anti-Semitic is no longer valuable to Trump or no longer valuable to the Democrats, you won't hear anything about it. And the anti-Semitism that has arose as a result of their actions will be something that they don't take responsibility for. They have no solution for. They'll maybe go on TV and chastise people about it, but there'll be no structural solution or acknowledgement of how we got to this point or their role in getting to this point.
Yeah, and Adam touches on this too, where his assertion is the correct one, which is that the people committing genocide are waving a Jewish star around, and that is contributing a lot more to anti-Semitism than to the people protesting it. This was another part that I found, I sent the codes in our chat. This was another part that I found to be fascinating, they're going back and forth here, speaking about phrases like from the river to the sea and Hamas's intentions with the state of Israel. And you see how Torres uses the Hebron massacre to basically justify the Nakba, which he doesn't acknowledge in the clip. And Friedland kind of calls him out on it. So this was another part that I thought was good.
They didn't have to fucking move because black people could vote. And
Talking
he
about
said,
South Africa.
tell your kids to come back because we need them to build our country. I don't know. I think that I don't see what's wrong with people being afforded the right to vote.
Do you think that's what Hamas means when it says free Palestine from the river to the sea?
To me, it seems like maybe if there's a recognition that people were cleared off their land in 1948.
But there are those who only want a Jewish state, and there are those who only want a Palestinian state.
Then they could fuck off.
And we should be advocating for the coexistence of a Jewish state and a Palestinian state.
Why can't
I continue to believe the two-state solution ultimately is the inevitable path forward. That is my.
It's stupid.
You know, there were 1,000 Jews who were murdered before the establishment of Israel, like a half a century before the establishment of Israel.
Half is.
1,000 Jews.
Yeah, they were killing each other, Jews and Palestinians.
The
Yeah.
Hebron massacre.
It doesn't make sense to me. This in 2025.
The only point was there was violence against Jews before the establishment of the state of Israel.
There's violence against Palestinians.
I mean, sorry, can we just say like the establishment of the state of Israel was more than just a brief moment where England's like, hey, here's Israel. There was a Zionist settlement process going on for the decades ahead of it. Like Rashid Khalidi's 100-year war of Palestine isn't called the 75 years war on Palestine for a fucking reason.
Yeah, this
Also,
was.
there is no.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there are no other examples where like America or American politicians would apply this logic into any other group that has had violence committed against them by colonial powers, by even like coexisting powers within their own region. They would never accept like inter-ethnic group like concentration camps in parts of Eastern Europe. I mean, they maybe would depending on who was in charge, but you know what I mean? Like the argument that they're making for this is entirely predicated of it being in service of the United States war machine, and of course our NATO allies in Europe. But like that wouldn't apply to Native Americans doing it, to white people in America, black people doing it. It's the kind of logic that like you can use to like kind of convince liberals that this fascism has like a liberal bent to it, but it falls apart when you look at any other example of like how we treat minority groups or what we think that they deserve around the world.
Right. And I'm reading here from the Jewish Virtual Library talking about the Hebron massacre, and this is their read of it. Hebron had up until this time been outwardly peaceful, though the tensions hid below the surface. The Sephardi Jewish community in Hebron had lived quietly with its Arab neighbors for centuries. These are Jews, as they reference, who were originally from Spain, North Africa, and Arab countries.
How is that possible if Islam is inherently violent?
Right. These Sephardi Jews spoke Arabic and had a cultural connection with the Arabs in Hebron. In the mid-1800s, Ashkenazi native European Jews started moving to Hebron, and in 1925, the Slobodka Yeshiva, officially called the Yeshiva of Hebron Knesset Israel Slobodka, was open. Yeshiva students live separately, and basically it becomes a clash between Zionist immigrants, as they write, and their Arab neighbors. They are acknowledging that there were Jews that were living there, the Sephardi Jewish community, that lived peacefully with their Arab neighbors. But once Zionism started, that's when tensions and that's when violence began to become more frequent, because the settlements were acts of violence and there were obviously tensions and there was resistance.
It's the nationalism, stupid.
So this is Torres using that to justify basically the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in 1948. Go ahead, Brandon.
And also, he's still justifying it now. And evoking the two-state solution is just a stalling tactic. It's meant to stall because the two-state solution is something that nominally only one side of this conflict has been working on for the entire time it's been talked about. That's Palestinians, and it's been disrupted by the U.S. and Israel. Are, you know, not that those are two different entities, but, you know, the U.S.-Israeli complex has been disrupting that talk because it's not what Israel wants in the region.
Exactly.
The settlements are an example of that. They've been very open about not wanting it because they view a two-state solution as unacceptable, and they view the alternative, which is the more likely scenario of what will happen now that they've been doing their genocide, a one-state solution where it's not a Jewish ethno state, as the same thing as losing their country. And that is just the white supremacy or analog that they have become in their country. And Ritchie Torres understands that stalling is a tactic that they can use to hopefully outlast this genocide. And maybe by the time people realize or start actively like agitating in a way that Democrats can't ignore, or Republicans can't ignore, or, you know, Labor can't ignore in the UK, or any other of these Western countries that are complicit in this genocide can't ignore, it'll be over. You know, they'll all be in South Sudan, or they'll all be dead. And then everyone can then wake up to the genocide for the first time. All of the people complicit in our media can wake up to it. All of our politicians can wake up to it and go like, I can't believe this happened and no one did anything. And maybe we just won't do this again in the future. And that's what they're hoping will happen. I don't think it's possible, but, you know, that's like that shows you the depths of their deprivation here, that they're hoping that they can just keep talking about, you know, unicorns and two-state solutions until every Palestinian is dead or displaced. And then like acknowledge that something bad happened. And just one more point, this is not the only topic they do this about. Climate change is another topic that they do this about. They talk about the ways in which it's complex and how they acknowledge the science, and they're really just stalling with the idea that like there'll never be a time where it's too late for there to be a two-state solution, or too late to tackle the climate catastrophes that are on the way. But, you know, we're already there for both of those things. And that's just something people have to become aware of. I think that like this is a way for them to get their way without becoming or seeming actively antagonistic to things that we would consider to be liberal, like fighting climate change or not doing a genocide.
Or racial integration. Go ahead, Bender.
No, I was going to say what really, struck me when I was watching this, along with, Adam's, very emotional discussion, and I thought that was great. Ritchie comes off like he's offended, as if he has something to be offended for. Like, he's not Jewish. He's not even Israeli.
He's not Palestinian.
He's not, right? But he's sitting. Well, Adam's not talking.
No, I get it. Yeah,
right. Yeah. But he's sitting there as if as if Adam is saying something against him, and that just it struck me because that comes off very bizarre and inappropriate, by the way, when you're actually sitting across from someone who is actually Jewish and lived in Israel, who's sharing this feeling with you based on their own personal life experiences. For him to come off as if like something was said that deeply affects him when there's nothing there. Ritchie Torres, life goes on for Ritchie Torres no matter what happens in Israel and Palestine. He has no family there. He has no connection there. He has no connection.
He had a great in Tel Aviv, Bender.
Yeah, but other than that, he has no connection to the other factors such as, his Judaism, which he isn't. Yet he's sitting there like upset that Adam would dare to say these things to him. And I think that really comes across, and it's not just Ritchie Torres. There are so many U.S. politicians, not even just politicians, also just evangelical Christians, period, non-Jews altogether, that for some reason they feel like their position on what's happening with and in Israel and Palestine has some sort of effect on them, when it doesn't at all. I mean, the effect is in their own imaginary land where whatever
in his career
believes.
it does. It does, though,
for
in
Ritchie
his
Torres,
career.
yes,
because that's why he's so indignant, Binder, and you hit the nail on the head, is it's because the continued conversation around this is a threat to his political future. And he has big ambitions. He was putting his name out there about running for governor potentially, but stood down because Hochul does already have a challenger to her left in Delgado. But you see the inherent anti-Semitism behind anti-Zionism in the way that he treats Adam's Jewish experience as something that is an inconvenience to him or not. He's totally disrespectful about it because it is a problem for him using Jewish people to justify the blood-soaked money that he takes. I just want to go a little bit more into.
I was going to say, like, I'm not sure if we're getting to that clip, but I think it's, or if we already watched that, I can't remember. But there's a point where he says, like, that's just your experience, or something to the effect of, like, that's not everyone's experience.
Right.
And
it might be in this, I forget, but
okay. But I just wanted to point out that they never look at that. They never have that view when someone is sharing the opposite, right? Like they never say to someone who's sharing a pro-Israel feeling that, well, there are people on the other side. No, that only ever happens when someone is criticizing Israel. And then they say, well, that that's just your view. It's never the other way around.
But to be honest, that's how we should approach it too. Because fuck them. Anybody who supports Israel or thinks that actually Israel's trying to minimize civilian casualties, fuck them. Who gives a fuck? I don't care. I don't care what they think. First of all, they're a small part of the party that he's a member of, like a vanishingly small. But even outside in the real world, like they're fucking wrong. Who gives a shit?
Before the establishment of the state of Israel,
There was violence against Palestinians. And there was an ethnic cleansing in 1948.
I mean, the Hebron massacre.
What are you talking about right now? You're in the government? Listen, I didn't want to argue.
Wait, I'm sorry, you're not familiar with the Hebron massacre in 1929?
Oh, you got him.
Wait, you're saying that justifies an entire ethnic cleansing in 1948?
Israel was
Whoa, this isn't even a good argument.
Hold up. Israel.
What are you talking about?
I didn't realize we were debating.
I don't want to do it, but you say something like that.
The Jewish state was established by international law, right? The UN passed a resolution that recognized the establishment of a Jewish
What else does international law say?
state.
Yeah.
And there were a number of Arab countries, including Egypt, that declared war on Israel. It
Yes.
was the War of Independence.
The Palestinians
and Israel won the
did.
war.
The Palestinians didn't declare war on them. They were just people that were living there. And they were kicked off their
And
land.
by the way,
There
were
either at gunpoint
800,000
or
Jews
killed.
that were ethnically cleansed
Do you
from the
know
Arab
what-
world.
do you know what-
there were Jews? You know how many Jews there are
Not
in the
by
Arab
the
world? Almost none.
Palestinians.
I'm not talking about the I'm talking about the broader Arab
So
world.
why do the
Ooh,
Palestinians
well, that's an
have to
interesting
Right, that's what
bear
I
the
like.
responsibility of the
classic.
Yeah, Arab world. The conflation of Arab and Palestinian here too. Another racist trope that AIPAC, tries to trot out there. That there's really no difference.
Right.
Keep going.
Algerians kicking the Jews out.
You can relitigate.
Why do the Palestinians bear the responsibility of Egypt invading in
Israel's been a
1948?
state for 77 years.
Bro, it's so
And
depressing
so
what you're saying right now.
You're proposing to undo an established state?
No, I know people that live there. I have family that live there.
Then what
I
is
don't think that they
then
should
what are you
leave.
proposing?
I'm proposing a democracy. I'm proposing an extensive demographic study of what was taken and what was lost, extensive reparations for
Yes.
what was taken, and a truth and reconciliation process where we can end this shit. What we're seeing right now is that members of the Israeli government are talking about clearing that shit out. And Trump, our president, is talking about putting a fucking jet ski museum there. And that's the reality
that
right
is
now.
the far right, yes.
It's
That's
the
a
far
view that
right.
I reject. So
What the far right?
Can
I'm
you
talking about the
pause?
government
This is
that-
interesting to me, and maybe not to anybody else, but I do like tracking political rhetoric and how they shift in moments where they're feeling some sort of tension or like it's not justifiable anymore for them to use previous talking points. Even Torres now, first of all, Adam Schiff came out and said, I'm in favor of blocking some arms to Israel. And now you have Ritchie Torres coming out and throwing Netanyahu under the bus. They're pretending that Netanyahu is the sole problem. We just played or yesterday read from an interview where Isaac Chotiner of The New Yorker spoke with Jack Lew, Biden's Israeli ambassador, where he accidentally admitted in the middle of the interview that the Netanyahu government was being propped up by Biden because they preferred to work with him over having the government collapse. So forgive me if I don't believe this now turn to Netanyahu as the big bad guy, but keep going a little bit longer.
and the generals that are in charge of Israel.
The Ben-Gavirs, the Smoltridges of the world, that's a view
They're
that I
the
reject.
cabinet.
Yes, and I reject them.
That's what Hamas is saying they want to do to
The
Israel.
fuck does that mean?
I'm sorry?
I mean,
Hamas murdered thousands of people, so there's...
Thousands. Can we just stop at thousands? What does that mean? That's not true.
Right.
The civilians that died, what about 800 if we're assuming all of those were killed by Hamas, which is, something that is worth checking and going back on. IDF members killed on October 7th is not the same thing.
Yeah.
And thousands,
this is just
thousands implies multiple thousands, not just 1,200. Let's say even if you're including the IDF people who, any type of, whether it's Hamas, any Palestinian resistance has, per international law, a right to attack because they're occupying. Like, this is just, and also, you go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was just going to say, you're absolutely right. But this is just a way we can tell Democrats are disingenuous and they're pushing back against the worst elements of the genocide now, right? This idea that now that Trump is in charge and he's going to do a lot of the same things that Biden was going to do, but a lot more aggressively, antagonistically, vocally about them. They can pretend that they're against the genocide and against the ethnic cleansing. And then they can, point to, and then they can just still, legitimize. They can still say, thousands of people were killed by Hamas for no reason. And, all of these innocent civilians were killed. And a part of this is just about, not even a part of this, all this is about America and how Americans perceive their place in the world. And without Israel, Democrats would have a lot harder time getting money from the military industrial complex, but also advocating for the United States imperial objectives in the Middle East, because Israel represents a very convenient way for Democrats to pretend like they are pro-liberal values while still just funneling tons of money to the security state, to the to the intelligence agencies, to military industrial complex, to the war machine that destabilizes the Middle East and makes Western countries a lot more endangered by result of the blowback that they will inevitably experience in the form of retribution from these countries, and then also just in the form of the violence that inevitably springs up in these countries by nature of the fact that they, valorize this kind of violence. They valorize and they legitimize genocide at the geopolitical level, at the international level, at the domestic level. We have an occupational force that's targeted towards brown people in one form or another. And, the violence that we experience will, just be interpreted as being out of nowhere, which will then just further fuel the war machine. It'll further fuel people, believing that there's barbarism over there as opposed to what is really happening, which is, barbarism is seated in the seat across from Adam Friedland, right?
Exactly.
It's stuffed into a suit.
Mentioning Hebron the same way Zionists mentioned October 7th, as if, this is the time where history starts. And there was nothing, say, before it that could have provoked such a thing that happened other than the evil in the hearts of the Arabs, as they call it.
Exactly.
And, that, it seems ludicrous, but that is how our entire media understands this supposed conflict. Where it's
it's even like his line of thinking is even less complicated than that, and that's not even complicated. He's saying that Hamas, so Adam brings up how those far right elements are in Netanyahu's government, and so Ritchie Torres is able to just bat that down by saying he doesn't support those guys.
Yeah.
Even though they and their government are responsible for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of deaths.
Oh, it's hundreds
over the
of
past
thousands.
couple of
We
years.
got to use that only going forward. Yep.
Right. But then his response to Adam is, but what about Hamas and the thousands that they killed? As if that's he doesn't even see how that's the equivalent. It's not equivalent, but how that's the equivalent on each side, I should say. If you're
he thinks
saying,
it's worse. He thinks it's worse,
right,
for sure.
Right. But if you can just bat away the bad elements of the Israeli government that you view as the only bad elements of the Israeli government and wash your hands of those hundreds of thousands of deaths, but then you're going to turn around and say, but by speaking out against Israel, I guess you just align with Hamas and you're responsible for the thousands that they killed. It's just ludicrous line of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, but that I think is not just unique to Israel. We have to accept that that is the unique reality of the asymmetrical expectations that underpin like Western society and our colonial projects around the world, our imperial projects around the world. It's only violence. It only starts being violence when they hit back, because we've legitimized the occupation. We've legitimized the necessity of the occupation of certain groups around the world, at home and abroad, for the social order. And so when they fight back, when they hit back, that's unreasonable. It's immoral, it's impossible because they're barbarians. But if they do it, they deserve the worst to happen to them. And when we do that, it's no moral stain on our people, no moral stain even on our country, people who do it, except for in incredibly specific circumstances where we feel comfortable exceptionalizing, like a Netanyahu, a Ben Gvir, a Donald Trump, and then everyone else remains like just confused and morally unstained by it. But America's war machine will continue to produce these results anomalously, apparently. So I do think we have to understand that this is not unique to Israel. This is just the way like colonial powers have always expected colonial subjects to behave. And it's the way Americans are going to be expected to behave as like resources get scarcer here, as less people have jobs, as more people are displaced by climate catastrophes, as more people are thrown illegally into the concentration camps that are being built around the country. Like fighting back will be the only violence that is acknowledged. And so like as people legitimize the talking points that Ritchie Torres says, if you find yourself caring about the plight of other people just because they're other people who deserve to live, understand that this is the test run for what's going to happen to you, happen to your neighbors, happen to your kids. In fact, it's already happening to them. It's happening to them right now. Like
yep, the war on terror was everyone should read The Palestine Laboratory by Anthony Lowenstein, and also just look into the tactics that are being used on migrants and how they basically took torture from the Iraq War and expanded upon it to bring it domestically. Same stuff's going to happen in the way that fascism or imperialism or whatever turns inward and it becomes fascism, and those tactics are used against the population here at home. So that's what we're going to
The war on terror.
Yep.
The war on crime, the war on drugs, the war on poverty. They've always just been wars on the American people, wars on workers, wars on, the middle class. And they've been being waged unrestricted by like our government, locked in step with the oligarchs who, are now like out of the shadows, just like, walking into the White House, big smiles.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.